Western intervention in Iran, whether through direct military action or supporting hostile neighbors, has a long history. But why do Western powers intervene so frequently? Is it primarily about gaining control of Iran's oil? Or is there more to this long history of meddling? To answer this question, we need to go back to the beginning. Here, the immediate trigger was the nationalization of the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, which Western powers saw as a threat to their economic interests in the region. From supporting Iraq during the Iran-Iraq War to imposing sanctions and labeling Iran as part of an axis of evil, the U.S. containment policy was clearly geopolitical. Controlling Iran meant controlling a pivotal land bridge between Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. The very first intervention in 1909 aimed to secure economic advantages along with political influence. The Anglo-Russians wanted access to Iran's resources and markets, which were important for their imperial ambitions. After the 1953 coup, the Western powers enjoyed substantial economic benefits due to their close relationship with the Shah. The potential loss of a lucrative market intensified the sense of betrayal after 1979, and the desire for economic integration offered a path towards strategic détente during periods of thaw. Geopolitics and economics are thus inextricably linked in the history of Western intervention in Iran. Geopolitical considerations set the broad parameters. Economic factors often provide the immediate spark or the means of execution. The constant interplay between these two factors has shaped Iran as modern history and continues to define Western approaches towards the country. The U.S. sold billions of dollars worth of arms to Iran, most notably the F-14 fighter jets, and profited from infrastructure projects and consumer goods sales. Even during the later period of strategic rivalry, economic interests remained important. Iran has vast coastlines on the Caspian Sea and the Persian Gulf, giving it enormous geopolitical value. The deal offered Iran economic incentives like the removal of some sanctions in exchange for limits on Iran's nuclear program. The idea was that increased economic engagement would lead to political and strategic benefits for the West. In this case, the economic carrot was a tool to achieve geopolitical goals. During the Cold War, preventing the Soviet Union from accessing warm water ports was a key strategic consideration for the U.S., and Iran's geographic position was crucial in that regard. The revolution challenged American dominance in the region and Iran's support for groups like Hezbollah threatened U.S. allies like Israel. Iran's regional ambitions were seen as destabilizing and potentially challenging U.S. global interests. Again, while denying Iran access to economic benefits is a powerful tool, the primary goal is strategic containment. However, throughout history, geopolitical strategy has been the overarching, long-term driver of Western intervention in Iran. The first intervention aimed to protect British India from Russian threats. The second was to prevent Iran from falling into the Soviet sphere during the Cold War. And the third was to contain Iran's revolutionary influence. These three periods represent the main geopolitical goals, but the coup would not have happened without the Cold War context. The U.S. feared that an independent Iran, particularly one potentially destabilized by British sabotage, could fall under the influence of the Soviet Union or even be taken over by them. Preventing this takeover was the geopolitical imperative. Oil was important, but it was seen as a way to keep Iran within the Western sphere. In other words, the primary driver was still geopolitical. The first Anglo-Russian intervention in Iran happened in 1909, and the motivation here was overwhelmingly geopolitical. The British desire to control Iran stemmed from their need to protect their most valuable possession, India. From Russian expansionism, the Russians had already made considerable progress in Central Asia, and the British feared being outpaced in the region. Co-conquering Iran together seemed like a good idea before the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which divided the region between British and French spheres of influence. The Anglo-Russians, therefore, decided to invade Iran in 1909 to force the Cairo government to accept constitutional reforms and prevent Russian influence from growing. While economic interests like securing trade routes to India existed, protecting Iran from Russia was the priority. The next intervention, of course, was the 1953 coup, which overthrew Mossadegh and replaced him with the Shah after the Islamic Revolution of 1979. The U.S. hostility towards Iran was clear. Access to Iran also has significant geopolitical importance. But perhaps the most significant factor linking Western intervention in Iran is economic interests. The 2006-2015 nuclear deal, JCPOA Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, is a good example. In conclusion, it is inaccurate to say one factor always dominated. Economic interests, however, have been critical catalysts, underlying motivations, and powerful tools within that strategic framework. The nationalization of oil sparked the 1953 confrontation.